Okay, George, it is wonderful to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about something very, very close to your heart and close to mine as well. And this is about your mom, about your beloved mom. So, what I would love for you to do is just talking about your mom, what is bringing you to this conversation that we're going to have, and tell us about your story and her story.
I appreciate it. First, I just want to thank you and your audience for the opportunity to speak today. Again, this is not just about a talk, it's something that needs to continue until we find a cure. Unfortunately, my mother passed on 1/1/2020 due to Parkinson's disease, and I became her caregiver the last 4 years. She had it for about 15 years, but she didn't really tell us much. I heard of the word Parkinson's, but I myself was very unaware. I also felt alone going through the journey as a caregiver. Many times I wish I had someone like you out there or knew that there were so many people out there also battling it, but I didn't. And that's what I comes to today, advocacy. And today I fight for, in memory of my mother and all those we've lost due to Parkinson's, but for the people still diagnosed battling Parkinson's today and their caregivers, because I'm sure, as you know, unfortunately, Parkinson's doesn't just affect the person. It affects the family, the neighbors, the community, and it's also the fastest neurodegenerative disease, unfortunately, in the world. Approximately 1 million in the U.S., 10 million around the world. And it needs to end. And I feel we can all do that if we all come together as a family and we fight this disease to end it forever.
Thank you. Thank you for actually what you're saying is the necessity to bring the awareness because you know what happens, George, that people don't talk much about
Right.
these things. We don't talk about situations that happen at this level, like diseases, health conditions. We don't talk about grief. We don't talk about death. And as I was sharing with you, off the air, that I am a thanatologist, which is the study, thanatology is the study of death and dying. And I am also a gerontologist in the study of aging. And those two topics that they happen are human. We all go through that. Like, and if we have enough, years, we are going to be, older
Yeah.
adults, but we don't talk about these things. And as you said, it's important to bring awareness because you touched upon different topics, being Parkinson's disease, what your mother suffered from. And you said that she had it for 15 years. That's what you said, 15?
And I also want to commend you and thank you for doing a show on grief. In my experience, doing this a few years now, I don't see enough. And like you said, we all have a beginning, middle, and an end of life, but for some reason, people just don't want to hear the end of life. But if you tackle tough topics like I try to, and you cover these things, people would be so much less stressed because I can't explain to everyone listening how tough it was, not just to manage and help my mother through her tough time but to prepare. We never knew she would pass due to Parkinson's because we were told by many doctors, experts, that you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. My mother had no other health issues before Parkinson's, but she was incredible. My mother, we'll hopefully talk about her, but she was so into planning, probably why I am. I even have a list in front of me, and but you have a list, you check it off, you try and maintain what you can. But she had to allow me to be her power of attorney. We already had a will, so we didn't have any arguments. Not that we would have, but with family and things. We also had her the funeral planned out. It was done, so I just can't imagine. It was already horrible going to that event, her funeral, and speaking. I don't know how I got through that speech, but if I had to go deal with the money and the fighting and all the stuff that comes afterwards that we don't want to think about, it would have been even 10 times worse. I could have wrote a second book on just that. So thankfully, my mother was an incredible person, not just inside and out, but planning. Because again, it was just all, even now today, I'm 4 years later, I'm still kind of in shock. I'm still grieving. I miss her every day. And thankfully, last week, our book came out, my first book on this topic. I've written books in other fields like law and criminal justice. That's my prior profession. But even looking at the cover, you can probably see it here. Sometimes it makes me a little bit tear up, and I'm 6'2", 200 pounds in law enforcement, but My mother was my best friend, but that actual moment was when we were dancing together at the mother-son dance during my wedding. And
Wow.
my wedding was number one of my best moments besides my children being born. But in that moment, my mother and I were dancing. Parkinson's disease didn't matter. It didn't win that moment. And that's the things, the memories that it can never take from us. And one goal I have today, again, it's just so people are aware of Parkinson's and that they know they're never alone. So, that's a big issue is people, when they grieve, I think you do feel alone. And if I had known now what I know, not known then what I know now, and there were so many other people going through it, it just changed a lot of how I look at things. So that was important to me.
Thank you. And well, you just talked about different things that are so important to tackle. Like what you said about the things to do, the things to plan. And that is something that people, working with clients and families and all that, I see that sometimes people don't take the time, either to do the legal things in a sense of, the power of attorney, the living will, the health proxy, the advance directives, as we call them. Because sometimes people say, no, I don't want to go there. So time comes and it may be difficult, even more difficult if we do not have, those legal documents in place. So I think that that's an extremely important part of your message, George, because people need to know these things. And you know that sometimes we act upon those things when there is a disease, but we should have those things even before, when we are healthy, when we are well, our significant other to have, you have to have a living will so they know what to do, or a power of attorney. So that aspect of a caregiver that you shared, I think is extremely important. So people get informed about that. Also to have the plans for the funeral, for the cemetery, to have pre-need, instead of at need, to have it pre-need. Also, it is important. And, you're sharing about your mom. I lost my mom almost 4 years ago also.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, my mom. And she was the apple of my eye as well. And yes, thank God, she also had, those papers together, the plans and all that, because it does make a difference, even though it is very painful, but at least that part, that
Yeah.
have it ready. So it's important that in your message, you continue talking about that so people can take steps, before of the things that they can still have in order.
Yeah, I'm only 46 and we already have everything done, like literally. And I don't think it was because of my mother or that I'm a lawyer, but I just felt I didn't want my family to have to, again, continue to be upset and struggle through all the legal stuff. I mean, as a lawyer, if you don't have a will, it could be very rarely nothing occurs, but if you have two brothers or two sisters or several family, they want a specific, even like a little book that your mother or family member might have, and you end up in court over that, it's not worth it. So there's so many ways to prevent that, but we have to keep talking and having these conversations. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that you touched upon with this, and it's interesting because I just finished a program that I had here. I have a center in Miami, Florida, and it was an 8-week program called Transforming Grief and Loss. And we were talking about how we don't think about the logistics. What happens after the fact, when the person dies, when our beloved, our loved one dies, all the things we need to do that people don't talk about that. Would you like to share with us what happened after that? And then I would love to tap into your mom's life.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is with the book, like we just unfortunately never have time and people want to know about the symptoms. So in the book, it covers the first symptoms of Parkinson,
Uh-huh.
some of my primary caregiving, so the whole world of caregiving, and also the last week of her life, which was very, very tough. And then what you're kind of referring to, the aftermath and mission forward. After my mother passed again, it was so unexpected. I was kind of like just shocked still. I didn't know what to do. I mean, even selling and clearing out our home was horrific. So those are type of the areas for someone grieving, which are literally disastrous for your health. I remember even being with my mother, I felt like I had secondary Parkinson's, which isn't a term, but in the criminal justice field, if I've worked my whole life advocating for actually in West Palm Beach, Florida, African American mothers who lost their loved one due to murder. A lot of the time, somebody passes due to crime, and the family members are actually secondary victims, and they're forgotten by the criminal justice system, and they're grieving terribly. So in the Parkinson's world, it's similar because a lot of the time there's not enough awareness yet for Parkinson's, so people just aren't aware. And a lot of time, the Parkinson's community is forgotten by our society. So that's one of my goals is to try to change that. When I was caring for my mother towards the last 4 years, I went through pain, like depression, sadness, frustration, even anger at times, not at my mother, but at the disease becomes. And towards the end, she found out she had late onset dementia, which made it even more difficult because with Parkinson's, you might have external, internal tremors. She also had stiffness to her left arm. She had trouble using, also rigidity in the muscles. So it's almost like someone wants to walk, but they freeze. And also dystonia, which is the curling of the toes. Later on, unfortunately, she had trouble with the voice and things and even mobility. But on top of that, yeah, dementia and the hallucinations and delusions were something out of a horror movie, like a alien form
Mm.
landed because so it was just a lot to kind of take in and deal with. And, I think it makes me stronger. But again, piece of me, I feel passed away when my mother did because I'll never be the same. She was only 69. I'm only 46 now. So it was, still think she should have had at least 10 more years, but I don't think I would have wanted that because she was in such bad pain. She was very healthy for her whole life. She never had any medical issues really. And then towards it was for 7 years she had it, but again, I knew what the word was. We didn't know much more because she, I think, kind of hid it from us. She didn't want to burden our family with it. That was a problem because I don't know if it was too late by the time I took over. I actually only became her caregiver and found out how bad Parkinson's was on the fourth year before she passed. She went to a university and for a trial, and we don't know if they drastically changed her medicine too much, but I was called to her house at 4 a.m. and she was moving her furniture out of her house. And I asked her why, and she said she's in fear that there's Nazis inside that are going to harm her. And that was the night that, changed my life forever.
And how, when you say that, you started being her caretaker, do you want to share with us? Because that aspect, it's also of when we take care of our loved one, it's something that also we want to bring a lot of information because
Yeah.
it's something that happens a lot. And again, people don't talk about it. And
Yeah.
I would love for you to share with us, if you will, how was that experience? What helped you as a caregiver? What helped you deal with the situation? What helped you deal emotionally? And what would you have loved to have or to be with, while you were in that transition?
All the time it was just me and my mother. I didn't have as much support as I would have liked. Thankfully for my wife and my children, they were the huge support. Even today, my wife helps me. Like we could talk, we'll be fine. I'll go in the other room and fall apart. It's still tough to talk about. And but I did do most of it alone. I took care of her financial things. We spent $12,000 a month just to hire companies who had to fire like 20 people and hundreds of characters. We called them aides because the only goal was that they wouldn't allow her to fall. Because I knew if she fell on top of everything else, it would be over. So, that was their job. Unfortunately, because of the dementia, my mother kept calling me 24/7 saying they're harming her or they're gonna really like worse things that I don't want to say on your show. But I'm a police officer reserve now. I had to put video cameras throughout the house in a way, because at least I knew I could monitor her. I didn't put them in the private spots like bathrooms and things, or who knows. But so when she called, I did watch a lot, and luckily they didn't really harm her. We did catch one that neglected her, my mother didn't sleep because her stomach was so kind of messed up from all the Parkinson's medicine. So I do remember, sadly, one time she got up at night and calling for help to go to the bathroom. At some point, she couldn't walk and they didn't respond. They were sleeping. So we had to fire that person. So it was like a constant battle. Like I felt like a nail with a hammer. So whether it was Parkinson's disease, the medicines, whether it was the dementia, whether it was her home or trying to get her food, shopping, life just, is not easy. So I just, so busy in it and I'm so deep into it, I didn't really have time to worry about the consequences, but I definitely neglected my own health, which wasn't good. And even today, as an advocate, I neglect my own health because it breaks my heart not knowing or knowing that people are still, going through this, and I never want anyone to have to go through what my mother and I have. And I always say the only journey today that breaks my heart is the one that I'm not aware of, because there's so many people out there that I'm not aware of. And last 2 years, I just learned that it wasn't just Parkinson's people diagnosed and affected families in the U.S. about 1 million. But then I learned there were 10 million around the world, and I was like, imagine someone smacking you. And I decided I would go on a new mission, and decided I've interviewed 600 people around the world from Spain, France, Italy, England, Iceland, Australia, Nova Scotia. I mean, you name it. Unfortunately, Parkinson does not discriminate and it can affect anyone around the world. And even Africa, I interviewed someone and they're all on Together for Sharon.com completely free. And the reason I don't accept money is I just want people to be able to feel a little comfort to know that they're not alone and that there are people fighting for them and other people, unfortunately, experiencing what they are. But someone like me, again, will never stop until we find a cure.
That's
So
beautiful.
that's how I kind of grieve, to be honest. Still, that's how I.
And you know what? And we'll talk about also the website, because it's
Thanks.
amazing, the website and what you're doing. What we talk about this in my field of grief is when you are able, when you're doing something like this, when you are creating this awareness, and as you say, because you said on the website, you're creating a movement, to bring this awareness. It's you're doing, you're honoring her, you're honoring your mom, and as you honor her, you're also creating the awareness to help others. So that's when we say you are finding meaning in that pain, despite of that pain of that huge loss. You are finding meaning, and that is so precious and so valuable for the healing process, because it's not only grieving but also healing, because they go hand in hand, depending how we deal with the grief, right? What do we do with it? Because grief is not passive, grief is active, and what you're doing is so important, that I feel in my heart that that's where you are, walking on the path. What do you think about what I just told you?
I agree. I mean, I thought when we started Together for Sharon.com, I thought maybe 3 or 4 people would see it and that would be fine. But we've had over like 40,000 people visit the website and it's just growing. And I don't know if that's just my work or that sadly it's the disease is growing, and spreading more. And that's sad if that's the fact. But it's great to know again that there are people out there that can find some solace or even a few moments of even joy, knowing that again they're never alone. But I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I mean, for me though, I think uh, not selfishness, but part of me is still angry that the disease took my mother and it's taking so many lives because they such good people, and she was actually a school teacher and she had a master's degree and she sacrificed her life so she could raise me and my brother. So I knew when it was time for me to step up, because I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for my mother, that I would step up for her and at least be able to comfort her. And she made me swear never to put her in a home. So I'm proud to say we didn't. But there were days where I was arguing with myself, saying I can't do this. I'm not trained for it. And some days it was not her, but the disease was so took over. I mean, we only had hope that they'd find a cure. But every day, she got a little worse. She would look at me and say, what is going to happen? And I couldn't answer, and I never lied to her. We even had to remove her telephone at some point because she was calling the police because she thought the aides were harming her. I had to take a gun out of her house because, again, she lived alone, a female, and I trained her how to use a firearm for protection. Luckily, she never needed to, but we had to remove that because, God, I could go to her house to help her and she could shoot me. So it wasn't really like, my mother at that point. And then some days it was kind of so uncomfortable where one morning I was with my mother and my daughter. She was 7 at the time. We were in my mother's bed just hanging out with her, and she started hugging the pillows and the quilts, saying how much she loves Brooke. And Brooke was sitting near me. She wasn't. So my mother didn't realize the quilt and the pillows were not Brooke. So that's where the dementia was really tough, because my daughter looked at me and giggled uncomfortably, and I didn't even know what to say. So it's just, these are all the stories that are in the book, and it's
Mm.
really nice because I finally, you might be interested, but the last year of my mother's life, for my grieving too, I wrote a journal, and I never shared it with anyone. I actually took video and pictures, but I won't share those because I don't want my mother to be remembered. But the journal is literally dates and times and when I was writing it, and it's weaved in throughout the book. So it
Uh-huh.
actually take a person right into our house, into my experiences and into my thoughts the last year, which was really unfortunately like hell. So sometimes I do say skip that chapter because the rest of the book is very. I do bring a lot of light and joy from the darkness, so it's very positive, except for that chapter. But I always get those questions like, "What happens to you if you're part? What about the care?" Well, now, literally, it's all answered for you in the book, and very proud of it. I don't expect to sell a lot because that's not what this is about. My goal is just that my mother's never forgotten and that other people know there's another resource out there. And it's not, I did a lot of research before deciding to do a book, and there isn't one book in the world, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from a son who lost their mother, a loved one due to Parkinson's. So it's literally the first.
That's
And
beautiful.
it's sad
That's
in a way that it should be more, but that leads us to another area if we have time. But today, as we speak, I'm not diagnosed with Parkinson's. I'm no longer a caregiver of someone living with Parkinson's. And I find myself even today still grieving over that, where there's a lot of big organizations, I won't say names, or even people who kind of forget me and forget people who passed away from Parkinson's. Obviously, the focus is on the people still fighting and their families, but I don't believe that my mother still doesn't matter, and I still think I have a voice. So as long as I'm out there, I'm going to fight in memory of my mother, but also all those. I mean, we've lost millions, not a million. We probably lost 10 million people due to Parkinson's, and they have 20 million family members that are still out there. But a lot of time, like you are an expert, they move on and just kind of, they don't forget, but they just don't realize there's still someone out there that wants them to be a voice. I mean, if we had all those people and those families still fighting and advocating, we would probably, I think, already have a cure. But what I'm noticing in my experience in these years is that there's, I might be calling my next book, which is done already, A Seat at the Table. And it
oh,
has two meanings. One is no longer do I have a seat for my mother at our table because of Parkinson's disease at like holidays. And also some days I feel like I don't have a seat at the table in the community. Now, there are people who open their arms to me, but there's an example. I got an email once to be on like a board, and I didn't think I'd get it, but I thought it was exciting, like to be part of a Parkinson's community board. So I filled this application out for 3 pages. I was all excited. I didn't think they'd take me. As you know, I did research. I cited APA format. I had everything. It was all done. So I went to go press submit, and there were two buttons. So one was you have Parkinson's. The second button was you're currently a caregiver, someone alive with Parkinson's. Well, guess what? There was no third button. So my heart sunk, and I felt like my mother passed away a second time. And
mm,
I was like heartbroken. That inspired me to do another book, 200 pages, and it's done. I'm not releasing it yet. I have to review it and things, and it's not my plan yet. But it's literally, I feel the people who lost a loved one due to Parkinson's also should have a seat at the table.
yes. And that's extremely insightful because, when we lose a loved one, they die, like they're not with us physically, but they continue with us. They're always with us. And when we say those sayings, in our society is so death denial society. I used to teach at the university, at Florida International University here in Miami, and also for an online university, I taught death and dying, the class, not death and dying. And we will say that it's such a death denial society. So we don't want to talk about those things, but they exist. However, our loved ones, as long as we continue loving them, that we do because love is eternal, they continue living in our hearts. And because we love them so much, yes, it's that sense of grief. Because sometimes people say, okay, it's time to move on. That's it. I overcame. But the thing is that grief is a companion. At the beginning, it's such a strong companion and it's like overtake us. But it walks along with us. It walks along because, we have them in our hearts. Now, when someone like you does something like what you are doing, creating a movement, keeping the memory of your beloved mother there, present, bringing awareness and giving the place that it needs. Because, yeah, it's, very sad disease and so many people suffer from it. And yes, we need to bring this kind of as you are doing as a movement. I saw that you have a bracelet also. So tell me, how do you how do you foresee? Ah, you have it there. How
I
beautiful.
wear,
Yes,
I never, I usually sleep with it on.
I can very I saw it. And
Actually, I think you said you're in Miami. I'm close to you, and I'll be at the American Parkinson's Disease Association symposium this Saturday morning in Boca Raton, Florida. But after it's over, if anyone wants to join me, I'm on every social media. I try this month is Parkinson's Awareness Month, so I've attended several events live, and
uh-huh.
we'll be at the Parkinson's Unity Walk and Michael J. Fox Foundation end of the month in New York City at Central Park. So everyone's always welcome. It's a giant family, and seeing people, virtual is amazing, as you know, because I get to meet incredible people like you and your audience. But being there live, hugging, crying with the
Ah,
individual is so
yes.
fun. And then they love that they know I'm out there because it's hard. A lot of time at these events is pharmaceutical companies selling things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's me in the middle, and I don't have anything. I'm not looking to sell anything except that you're never alone in this fight. So it's really a beautiful moment.
That is
This is the
beautiful.
big month. After this month, I'm taking a little bit of a break, but it's
Yes,
usually
yes, no
I don't
wonder we're
have
so busy, of course. And I saw that on the second of last, no, on February, I think it was that you met. You had an
yeah
interview with Michael J. Fox. Was it on February?
yeah but yeah, it was a month or two ago, but it was just a rare opportunity to be
Uh-huh.
able to meet a legend, but also somebody who really has been put their life out there for the public, and he's raised about $2 billion, not million, billion on research, and he's helped bring about a lot of positive change. Unfortunately, when I met him, it was like it was quick, but it was happy, but also very sad because I saw what the disease was doing to him. He couldn't really stand much more. And also a week or two ago, if you saw, he won an award on TV and he had to come out in a wheelchair, which is, I've never seen before. He has young onset Parkinson's, young onset, which means he had it in his 30s. So
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of misconceptions that this is like an elderly man disease, but that's not true anymore. And also, we're trying to shine more light on females in Parkinson's because it's not enough light shed on females in Parkinson's. And one thing I was shocked that I was asked to speak at a summit, which I did last week, on being a male caregiver, and I couldn't believe it's almost like an epidemic that people who are male caregivers, either they're not out there or they're just not speaking out. And I challenge all those other male caregivers to please speak out and speak up because you all have a voice and people want to hear from you.
It's great that also that awareness, because I see it, with my clients, because I see, male clients. And it is again, something that people don't talk much, they don't share much. And it is extremely important because life has changed, lifestyle and society and all that, so much changed. There's so many things that are not the same as before. And we want to let people know because nothing stays static, you know. And when we go through these changes and men are stepping stepping in and are being the caregivers and the caretakers, they need to have a voice as well, and a voice to feel safe. And that's great that you, as a male, you can bring this sense of safety, of security. Yeah, we can relate, because that's the thing, that they want to feel, that they can relate to someone. And if you come and you talk to people and they say, okay, as you said, you go to this, convention or so, and there are the pharmaceuticals, and yes, and then you come, you are the person that had this experience, and people can come to you and you can understand. Because you know what, George, what I have noticed, and besides being myself, a bereaved daughter and sister, I lost my one of my sisters last year to cancer. And being a bereaved person and working with so many people that are grieving, what we want is to feel understood. We want to feel validated, that we feel this way, and not to be told you should feel the other way, but validated and understood. What has been your experience with that? How, as a griever, do you feel about those emotions and, feeling validated and understood, those state of emotional states?
I always didn't like when people said, "Oh, don't worry, in a few months or a year, you'll not forget." But I'm like, you'll move on. I'm like, there's no reason you need to do that. There's nothing bad about your memory of your loved one. My mother, again, was my best friend, and I don't plan on ever forgetting that any day. Unfortunately, I think about her 24/7. She was really the most reliable, caring person. She was the first person I called from, about maybe quitting law school, quitting the police academy, quitting the PhD. As you know, the dissertation takes 7 years, and I almost quit 10 times, but then having her voice there to push me to keep fighting was what got me through the tough times. Also, she was there for the good and unfortunately some of the bad. I'll never forget. We're from Brooklyn, New York, remembering 9/11. She was the first person I called because I was actually in a law school course and she was, at the TV. So she told me what was happening at the moment. So, not the bad things only, but also the good things. Like she always dreamed of being there for my daughter's wedding someday. My daughter's only 11, but this, she won't be able to. So, and like I mentioned earlier, when we have holidays now, it's just not the same. It never will be because of the seed missing, from my mother. And we used to argue on Sundays because we have a big family and we would all argue over, and like Spanish family, we'd argue where to order food from. And it's like a simple minor nonsense thing, but we would have big fights because everybody one wanted Spanish food, one wanted, Italian, one wanted, and anyway, Greek food. So we ended up like not ordering or just having a big fight. And now today on Sundays, I miss that. It's like now I don't know why we argued about that, but it was still funny now looking back. And I do have one thing I changed. I wish I could have had podcasts with my mother before even Parkinson's, because although I would have loved to have just talked about the mother-son relationship, about our life, and
Uh-huh.
unfortunately now there's no record. I mean, luckily I was able to. Her sister is still with us, and she gave me a lot of background for my book, which I talk about my mother's past and her history and growing up. But it's sad when at this point I don't really have much except for my memories, but about my mother's life and her, growing up and her before we met. So there's a little. That's the only thing I regret. I don't regret any of my caregiving because I don't think if we had to do it today, I could have done anything different. But I'm a big person believer that you never want to regret anything because you have to try everything, every possibility, and as long as in your heart you did the best you did, then you shouldn't regret the past and you can only look forward. Unfortunately, it's too late, for my family, but it's not for all the people out there still struggling and fighting Parkinson's. And that's really my goal again. I don't want anything in return. We don't accept money. We have a link for donations at Together for Sharon, but it's actually different organizations links. And so if you donate to Michael J. Fox, you click the button, it's in memory of my mother, but it goes to them. So look, I have nothing to do with any money and we don't accept money.
So about the fact itself of, when, I would like to know, how did it happen that you made the decision to create this movement, to start this journey of bringing awareness and helping others that suffer from Parkinson disease, not only the patients, but also the families? How it happened?
Yeah, basically, my mother passed unexpectedly, and I was shocked, and I didn't know what to do, where to go, what was going on. And I wanted her to be remembered, not for Parkinson's, but for who she was. So I started togetherforsharon.com, and my wife actually helped me pick out the word, the phrase. Like I was just saying Sharon, and then I still want her to be with us. We would all be together, and all of a sudden it just kind of came. I did my legal research to make sure no one had it, copyrighted it, and we have we own the name and the website, and that was. And again, I only thought we'd have a few people, but thankfully it's kind of grown and grown and grown, and now it's just incredible. We have our own podcast too, two of them where we actually one is called the Together for Sharon podcast.
Uh-huh.
That's what my nice because it's my wife and me, and I, because now you get to see the female side of caregiving too. Unfortunately for us, we have three children, but unfortunately she doesn't have as much time. So we just do that once a month. But then I have the Q&A with Sharon's son. That's just me. And I've kind of gone overboard. I've been so excited because I get to speak to people who have Parkinson's, the advocates. And I actually interviewed last week, you would like, but United States U.S. Senator Rick Scott, and we discussed the national plan to end Parkinson's disease, which is
Wow.
actually the first bill in U.S. history, which I can't believe today that we have no laws for Parkinson's people anywhere or the family. So now finally last December was the first time in U.S. history that the House of Representatives actually passed the bill. Now it's heading to the Senate, hopefully this year or next, and then it just needs the president to sign into law. So I please encourage you and all the listeners to please reach out to your senators and urge them to support the national plan to end Parkinson's disease, because we're literally in history now. Like if I speak to you in a year, which I hope we still will, we can't say that if it passed, and we need this bill passed. It'll change the world for, so many families. So the website, again, it was just started with my story and my mother, a few pictures, but since then we've have now a media section. We almost have our own TV station. Our podcast that we're doing with you will be up there permanently, because I think it's not just about us, it's about sharing how amazing you are and your audience. So that's there. The 600 interviews I've done are up there. We have a link to the national plan. We even have a section for celebrities. I had some incredible people like Ozzy Osbourne's son, Jack Osbourne, provided a video because Ozzy's struggling today. My picture with Michael J. Fox is there. The famous musician Kenny G actually played a song and dedicated it to my mother there. And
Oh,
I
Denise.
interviewed Muhammad Ali's daughter, and I actually met with
Ah,
Jana Reno, who was in Miami many years ago, and she had Parkinson's. So it's, again, it's growing. Sometimes I can't find things anymore because it's too much, but it's just a resource. And I also put under partnerships as a button you press for all the different organizations around the world who you can call for free and reach out. They have also support. One thing though I wanted to turn, because this is an important area on grief.
uh-huh.
I don't have Parkinson's and I'm not caregiving for someone alive. Well, I felt alone. I still did. So I was lucky enough by a group in Canada called PSP Awareness. They contacted me and said, we want to help you do something about that. So we actually started, and it's once a month at 4 o'clock on the third Tuesday of every month, completely free. It's a support group for anyone in the world who lost a loved one due to any disease. And if you go to togetherfisheran.com, click
Uh-huh.
about us, and then you'll see support group and you can sign up. But that's been incredible because now there's a place where I do feel welcome. I couldn't go to the ones for people diagnosed because I don't have any and I can't say anything. And I couldn't go to the one for people caregiving for people alive because, like we said, they don't want to hear about the end of life stuff.
Yeah.
So we had one the other day, and a gentleman lost his mother. He was older, to Parkinson's, and as he was saying it, my heart kind of sped up, realizing that I can help him and he's not alone, and now he'll know that. And that's really all, we can ask for.
Now, this is fantastic. Let me ask you. So people come together like in a Zoom meeting?
Zoom, you got it. Zoom. It's for anyone, anywhere. It's not recorded. It's confidential, and it's a
Yes.
safe place where, and again, we don't want too many people. We only have a few, which is all we need. because in 1 hour everyone can't talk if you have 1,000 people, but it's just a nice place for me even to still grieve and help. But I did want to say one thing. I don't know if we have time, but since we're talking about grief, I wanted to read maybe one sentence from my book about.
Please
I didn't
do.
do this. It's actually an exclusive. I've never done this before, but
I
because we're but this is just September 25th, 2019. Saw mom today with the kids. She was 100% fine and happy. After we left, the aide reported to me on the phone that mom lost control, couldn't understand where she was, didn't know where she was going to live, and was very delusional. Whenever she is with us, she seems to be okay. The disease, or this disease, is horribly fascinating and terrible, frustrating and baffling. So that's just a little part of my journal I wanted to share because I've never done that before. Not easy to say it, but it's just I'm glad that I'm able to, not scare people, but share a little bit of what I literally was going through at that moment and that time. And it's because, it was very tough. And that's what the hardest part, even if still going on shows and discussing these things.
thank you for sharing. Thank you
Thank
for sharing that because it's profound and it makes us it makes us human, George. I'll share something with you now. We're talking about this. As I told you, I lost my mom almost 4 years ago in June
Sorry.
2020, and I wrote a book, my latest book, because I have 4 books in grief, and this is in Spanish, not yet translated, and it's translated into English. The title: "Allow me to live my grief and heal from the inside out." And I talk about when my mom died, when she died, and I'm very open, very raw about how I felt. And then because of my field, I also, say what helped me, what did not, and different, techniques and suggestions to help us with the, heal from the inside out. But when I was just recording the audiobook that I'm planning to launch it for my mom's anniversary, and I recorded it, George, and I just was saying how, and I saw how vulnerable I presented myself in the book. I was actually so glad, because I'm like, we are humans. And if we do not share how we felt, this is being real. And for people to know that, yes, others, feel that way, it's like, wow, he's feeling the way I am feeling. So, you know, thank you so much for opening your heart to us.
Thank you too for all you do and the opportunity today. Means a
Yeah.
lot more than, and it's again, this is a conversation that needs to continue. And I don't see as much for grief out there, and I think we need a lot more for it. Or we just need awareness that people know you're out there too, because you could help so many people. But unfortunately, again, just like Parkinson's disease, we need more awareness.
We need more, definitely. I am very, very touched by this opportunity to meet you, to know about your mission, because this is a mission, more than a
Yes.
movie, it's a mission. And I would be more than glad, to let people know about the website, your movement, all the things that you are doing. And absolutely, please keep me informed because you let me know and I can share it with my people. And I would love to continue our conversation in some other time. I know you're busy. However, it would be wonderful to continue talking about this. And before we leave, what message do you want to give to us? What is those beautiful words that you can say to us just before we leave?
Sure. Yeah, I have a statement I always say. It's we love you, we support you, we care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I, along with the doctor, will advocate for you, and together our voices are just so much stronger. And I always say I'm just getting started because every time I meet someone like you and your audience and other individuals that inspire me, people fighting Parkinson's in memory of the ones we've lost and the families, it just continues to push me to really re-energize and jump back up and keep fighting. So until we find a Parkinson's disease cure, I won't stop. Even if it's my own health some days that is in trouble, but it just means the world to me that we end this disease forever from our planet and just grateful again for the time today. Thank you.
From my heart to yours, George. From my heart to yours. Thank you for being here with us, and we'll continue the conversation. Bye.
Thank you.